Hello everyone, good morning. Today is 23rd of November and welcome to the Hindu newspaper analysis discussion. So guys, let's start with the video. In the today's video, we are going to discuss the entire analysis of the Hindu newspaper. We'll simplify the articles, we'll see the background as well as the way forward in the articles. And I would like to tell you that if you are joining for the first time, you can download the synoptic notes of all the articles that we have given here. In these synoptic notes, we have structured the relevant issues. Even the editorials have been covered, and into the last, a mains practice question has also been given. Now, these synoptic notes can be downloaded from the Telegram channel, and the link for the Telegram channel has been given in the description box in YouTube. Moreover, you can visit the Telegram and can search there by typing Thinking Palette by Sahil in the search bar, and you'll get the channel. Now, before starting up, first of all, let's take the overview of the entire newspaper so that we can understand that actually which articles are important for the examination. So here I have the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper. Even if you have the other edition, you don't need to worry. Only the regional section is something where some regional political news etc. are different. Other things are similar. Now, the first article is talking about that the Supreme Court calls out the center over the short-term tenure of the CEC. We'll see this article. India-Australia trade pact set to open opportunities. We'll see the India-Australia relations here. Then moving on, after that, the city section, okay, the regional politics, fine, ongoing, fine, MCD elections into the Delhi and all such kind of things have been discussed. Then guys, the crime related issues etc. are there. You don't need to go in that particular direction. So moving on guys, in this particular way, much of the important things are not there into the regional section. Fine, now coming to the editorial page. On the editorial page, the first article that we have is India poll in the international politics. So how India plays an important role in the international politics global order, we'll see that thing. Think local climate action. So guys, this is a very good article, and some of the case studies across the India panchayats have been given that how they are playing an important role in the climate change. A very good article, a 5-star article. We'll see that. Then further moving on, persisting issues. Okay, so this article guys is talking about the data protection bill. Okay, now understand this particular thing. From the past 3 days, fine, Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, there are the full one page article that are coming onto the data protection bill. Then the strategy to use. So this article is talking about the national suicide prevention strategy, a bill protecting the state surveillance, again talking about the data protection bill. Then guys, the China's new COVID-19 cases near its pandemic peak. So the number of cases have increased into the China, and China follows the zero COVID policy where even if very few cases will be coming, they'll go into the lockdown. Fine. Then RBI's concerns on the slow deposit growth. So recently, the November bulletin of the Reserve Bank of India was released, and in this article, we'll see the state of Indian economy. The Supreme Court rulings on the pensions of the women IAF officers. We'll see this article, and we will also be taking up broadly that what are the present conditions or the representation of women in the armed forces. We'll see that. The political project of the Savarkarite international. Now guys, this article is talking about the Hindutva ecosystem and all such kind of things. Now the article, it is having the political inclination. Fine, it is an abstract article. Okay, now you don't need to go too much into this particular article with respect to the examination. However, if you have interest out of leisure, you can read that. Then after that, moving on, Rajnath proposes role of women in the UN peacekeeping force. We'll see this particular article. Then guys, after that, at virtual Rozgar Mela, Modi hands over 71,000 appointment letters. Now, what is a Rozgar Mela? It is the employment fair where the people are placed into the jobs. Then after that, moving on, political news, fine, no need to go in there. However, here there is one very important article, skill training of MGNREGA, Unnati Scheme, we'll discuss here. Railways preparedness, we'll see that. Then after that, this article talking about the India UAE Food Cooperation. So we will discuss the I2U2 framework. Then after that, moving on, Indonesia quake toll jumps to 268. Fine. So recently, because of the earthquake, fine, there are a lot of fatalities that have happened in the Indonesia. Erdogan signals ground operations into Syria. Fine. So basically, guys, Turkey's adventurism has been mentioned here. Fine. Then further moving on, US-China defense chiefs meet in Cambodia, discuss Taiwan competition straits. Okay, so basically guys, here we see this particular thing that the chiefs from the US-China, okay, and as they are coming together, and in the past we have seen that there was a lot of confrontations that were happening in the US and the China. So basically these kind of a meetings holds a kind of a positive way forward. Okay, however, you don't need to go and follow line by line this entire summits etc., because understand this particular thing that as we are talking about these kind of, when we talk about the IR part, Specifically, we need to see those particular things where either India is directly involved or where the Indian interests are involved. Okay, every bilateral meet between the two countries or within the few countries, everyone is not very much important. You need to know the broader themes. Then coming, Europe to be hit hardest in the global slowdown, says OECD. And even in the entire world, we are right now saying that a slowdown is going on. In the article also we'll see that. Then after that, Air India lands most punctual. So guys, these corporate trends, etc., you don't need to see here. Then in the last here, government is set to grant more funds to rural schemes. This is article an important one, we'll see that. And then we have the sports page. Okay, so that is guys all about the overview of the today's newspaper, and let's discuss all these relevant articles one by one in the detail. Okay, now starting up. So guys, first of all, we start with the GS quotation, and in the GS quotation today we are going to take the Barry Commoner's quotation. So Barry Commoner says that environmental pollution is an incurable disease. It can only be prevented. Okay, so pollution is something where pollution is something which is a sin and there is no going back. It sometimes becomes an irreversible phenomena. So this is a disease which can only be prevented. Once this disease has infested, basically the procuring might not be very easy, and this thing has been presented in the COP27. IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, last year released the sixth assessment report, and in that report it has provided that whatever climate vagaries we have incited, there is no going back in that particular direction. Okay, so this is in fact very true. Now moving to the first article. Meanwhile, good morning everybody. Rajya Lakshmi, Niranjan, Sahana, Aishwarya, Hardik, Sandeep, Pro IAS, Amit, very good morning. Anand, good morning. Yes, Anand, I am now doing good. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Now, taking up the first article. So guys, this first article we have taken from the text and the context page, and this particular article will see with respect to the GS paper number 3, state of Indian economy or issues related to Indian economy. Okay, in this particular article, some broad themes we are going to see, as well as some sectoral themes also we will be taking up. Now let's start with the article. First of all guys, little bit of a background. So what has happened? Just few days back, there was the Reserve Bank of India's officials. They have met with the MDs as well as the CEOs of the private banks, public banks, commercial banks CEOs, MDs. They have met. Moreover, the Reserve Bank of India has released its bulletin report, and in that bulletin report, Reserve Bank of India had provided that what are the economic conditions that are being faced by the India. So all these particular things we'll see here. First of all, the Reserve Bank of India, it has provided that the banks, that is the private sector banks, public sector banks, they are very much important in bringing the growth. Okay, they need to mobilize the deposits. Moreover, they can aid the credit growth, asset quality. They can adopt the new technology, and by this new technology, the banking needs of most of the people can be met. Now, first of all, it has been provided that Indian banks need to be very careful right now because of the global economic trends which are there, which are not very much positive. We see that around the world, economic stability is an issue because of the three developments that are going on. Number one, we see that the Russia-Ukraine war that is going on, it is impacting the energy supplies. It is increasing the prices. Now you see this particular thing guys, that the energy, it is linked with the transportation. And transportation has a very close relation with the inflation. Right now we see this particular thing that guys, Europe was a lot dependent on the Russia for the natural gas, and as Europe's natural gas imports that were coming from Russia got impacted, energy crises are coming, even the transportation sector had got impacted, and it is bringing a kind of an inflation in the Europe, and that inflation's spillover effects will come even in India because of the highly connected world that we have right now. Secondly, we see that there is an economic slowdown in the China that is going on. Why? Because of the frequent lockdowns that the China is imposing because of the number of the cases. Now you see this thing that after the globalization, the entire world is connected, and yesterday I even told you that if the USA sneezes one day, the other day the world catches the cold. So we see that in Europe the slowdown is going on, in China the slowdown is going on. Fine, then we see that there is the increased cost of living because of the inflationary pressure in the other countries of the world also. So as economic growth slowdown is coming, it will impact India. Okay, so the bank needs to be very careful about this particular thing. Now we find this particular thing that around the world, monetary policies, find they are being tightened up. Now, what is a tight monetary policy? See, just one connection I want to make here. See, when the COVID started in 2020, when the COVID started in 2020, at that point of a time, the countries came out with the fiscal stimulus. A lot of money was pumped into the economy because it was expected that if we pump this money, it will lead to the job creation, employment creation, and by that thing, economic activity will again start. Okay, the biggest fiscal stimulus was given by the USA. Even India announced the fiscal stimulus by the name of the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, where 20 lakh crore rupees were to be given. So around the world, the fiscal stimulus was carried. Now, as a lot of money has been pumped, what happened? It increased the money supply. And as the money supply increased, what it led to? It led to the problem of inflation, the most basic problem, principle of economy, that when the money supply will increase, inflation will come. Now, entire world is struggling with this inflation. And now to counter this particular inflation, the countries are coming with the tight monetary policy. And in the tight monetary policy, they are doing the opposite. They are just sucking out the liquidity. They are just absorbing the excess money. Now, as they are sucking out the liquidity, what happened? Understand, inflation and growth, they have a particular kind of a relation. When there is growth, there will be the high inflation that will come. When, if you want to control the inflation and if you bring that down, what will happen? The money supply will go down and it will also lead to the withdrawal of the growth. So as now the tight monetary policy is coming, it is also impacting the growth rate, and by that the emerging countries, developing countries, they will be impacted. How they will be impacted? There will be the drag that will be coming. It will be impacted in two ways. Number one, if there will be the low growth, then the external demand will be down. Okay, the demand in US, demand in Europe will be down, and Indian exporters who are exporting to these countries, they will face a kind of a, yeah, they will directly be impacted. Okay, so Indian exports will be impacted if there will be the less demand. Then the second thing that is coming here is that because of the higher global inflation, and because of these banks who are going for the tight monetary policy, the banks of the central banks of the other countries, it is also leading to the withdrawal of the capital from the developing countries towards the developed countries. Let's understand this particular thing also in very simple words. So when I told you that the COVID came in 2020, government started to give the fiscal stimulus, and at that point of a time, now you see, everything, most of the economic things works onto the principle of the demand and supply. When the supply is abundant, what will happen? The price will go down. Okay, and when the demand is high, the price will go up. Now you see, when the fiscal stimulus is being given, the money is being pumped up. What is available excess? Money is available excess. So the interest rate onto the money will automatically go down. So when the developed countries were giving the fiscal stimulus, the interest rates declined fine in at that point of a time. So therefore, investors from the developed countries, they came to the developing countries such as India, and they invested into the Indian stock market, into the shares, into the Indian bonds, and every places. And this is actually the reason, guys, that you might be knowing that in 2020, for the first time, the Sensex breached the 50,000 mark. Now you see this thing, 2020 Indian economy was not doing good. We were facing a negative growth rate, but the stock market performed phenomenally well. Why? Because of the foreign investments that were coming. Now, guys, what is happening? Now, in 2022 onwards, the central banks of the developed countries such as the USA, they are going for the tight monetary policy. Okay, and as they are sucking out the money, what is happening? The interest rate automatically will go up, and as the interest rates are going up, the investors who brought the money in 2020 in India, now they are withdrawing and they are going back to their home countries. So because of that particular thing, what happens? Fine, the interest rates are increasing in their home countries. It impacts the flow of the capital into the economy. New capital will not come. Even the capital that was there, it will go back. What will happen? It will impact the currency. It will impact the currency. Now, guys, you see this thing that the we say from the so many of the months we are saying that the rupee is declining. Now, why the rupee is declining? Rupee the rupee's performance, rupee's appreciation or decline depends on to the demand of the rupee. If the people will demand rupee, rupee will appreciate. If people will demand dollar and will dump the rupee, rupee will go down. Now as the investors are going, they are taking back their money. What they are doing? They are dumping the rupee and they are demanding dollar. So the dollar has appreciated, rupee in the front of the dollar has went down. So the currencies of the countries are also getting impacted by that. Okay. Now, the Reserve Bank of India in its report had provided that when we talk about the banks, banks play a very important role in disbursing the credit. Okay, for new business, for the consumption purposes, bank give the credit. Now, what amount of credit the banks can give, it depends in its in-house reserves, the money that the bank has. On that basis only they can give the credit. Now we see this particular thing that first of all, the urban demand, it appears robust because of the lockdown that has opened up, the economies have opened up, the urban demand is robust. Rural demand is not that much, so the credit demand is coming. Okay, now when we see this particular thing, guys, in the times of the pandemic, the credit demand came very much down. Why? Because when the lockdown is there, okay, there is no market, fine, economic activity is very cold. Obviously, why you'll take the loan? Okay, you cannot start a new business, you cannot start the new factory, so why you'll take the loan? So credit demand was very much low. But now as the economies are opening up, credit demand is going up. But at the same time, deposit rates are not going up. Deposit rates are not going up. Why? Because the deposit rates depend on the savings that the households have accumulated. Now we see that a lot of people have faced the economic impacts of the COVID-19. They don't have savings. Because of that thing, the deposit rate are not increasing. Now you see this particular thing. If bank has to give the credit, first they need to get the deposit, and if deposits will not will not come, the credit will be impacted, and if the credit flow will not be there, the growth will be impacted. So this is the phenomena, this is the issue that the India is right now facing. Moreover, the Reserve Bank of India's bulletin also provided that actually there are certain happy news also, good news also. Gross non-performing assets, they have come down to 1% of the total assets. Okay, so guys, very simple idea. What is a non-performing asset? When the bank has given the money in the loan to some person or to some corporate, and if they don't return that money, if they don't return the money, they don't pay the interest, that particular account becomes a non-performing account. Okay, so the non-performing assets, they are coming down. They are just 1% of the total assets, which is a good thing. Moreover, the corporate NPAs will also come down into the future also, because of the National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited that has been established. So what it is? It is the debt recovery, it is the debt recovery institution. Now guys, what is a debt recovery institution? Suppose a person had taken a loan and that person is not paying back that loan, so the asset reconstruction companies or the debt recovery institutions are the specialized bodies that will recover that particular money. So with the National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited that we have established, which some people also call as the bad bank, it is helping the banks and it is reducing the NPAs. Okay, so this is something that has happened. So that is all guys about it, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Okay, so this particular article, guys, again taken from the text and the context page, and first of all let's read the heading of the news articles and then let's understand that what the article is talking about. The Supreme Court rulings on the pensions for women IAF officers. Okay, and there is one more article, we'll talk about this after this article. Okay, so let's keep this article aside for 1 minute. Now, this particular article will see with respect to the GS paper number 2, the women, issues related to the women related issues. Okay, now, okay, now, see this particular thing, guys, that first of all, in this particular article, I will not be restricting to the present issue of the IAF that has been there. I will be giving you a kind of a holistic, broad view over the issue of women representation in the armed forces. Okay, here I will be taking up the coverages that have happened in the past 2 years, to be very precise. So basically, you might have read into the news in 2020 that there was a very big reform that came where it was provided that the permanent commission will be given to the women officers in the Indian Army. So that topic will start, will take, then we will be moving into the present issue of the Indian Air Force, what have happened. Now, first of all, guys, before going in the article, some of the basic informations I want to give you. Just a minute. Find some of the basic information I want to give you. When we talk about, guys, the armed forces, you might have heard about the word permanent commission and the short service commission. If you have heard it, very good. If you haven't heard it, not at all a problem. So basically, permanent commission means the term in the army till retirement. Terms in the army in the till the retirement. So the officers, they can join on the permanent commission. Then there is the short service commission. What is the short service commission? Here, an officer can serve into the armed forces for 10 years, which can be extended to 4 years, that is the 14 years. And after the 14 years, they can either switch to the permanent commission and will serve the army, will get the commanding positions, will get the pension, or after the 14 years, they can drop, they can take the retirement. So there is a permanent commission where you serve till retirement age, and then there is a short service commission, which is a service of 10 plus 4 years. Now, guys, when we talk about the women in the army, okay, so women's entry into the army started in 1992 with the with the special women entry scheme. Okay, and what happened in 2006, women were given the short service commission facility. It means that the women can enter at the short service commission and can serve for the 14 years. But there was one problem. There was one problem. In 2006, women were allowed to come on the short service commission, but they cannot convert it into the permanent commission. Now you see this particular thing. The male who are joining the Indian Army, if they are joining onto the short service commission, they can opt for the permanent commission and can serve till their retirement. But the women cannot do that thing. It has a particular problem. Number one, it was violative of right to equality, Article 14, 15, 16. Second problem that is coming here is that the pensions. Now a person becomes eligible for the pension only after minimum 20 years service has been done. But into the short service commission, the maximum service is of 14 years. So they were not also getting the pensions. Now this particular thing was challenged into the Supreme Court. This particular thing was challenged into the Supreme Court, and in 2020 what happened, Supreme Court came out with a landmark judgment, and this judgment was Babita Punia case. And in the Babita Punia case, Supreme Court provided that the permanent commission has to be given in the army to the women. Okay, so women will be given the commanding postings, number one, as well as the women are to be given the permanent commission into the armed forces. Okay, now guys, see this thing. Earlier government had already said that they will give the permanent commission, but it was not implemented. So after the Babita Punia case, it got implemented. Okay, now earlier when we talk about the women, okay, I told you that they were allowed by the short service commission after 2006, but their roles were restricted to the specified streams such as the army education corps, corps of signals, intelligence corps, corps of engineers. Okay, particularly the combat roles, women into the combat roles, fine, there they were not allowed. And even now the women into the combat role, that issue has not been addressed. Even in the Babita Punia case, the women into the combat role, that has not been. Now combat role means where they will be fighting onto the forefront, where they will be going into the war. So there the women's participation has not been addressed, because in that case it was not the matter. This is something that has happened. Okay, so guys, I have told you this particular thing, that what has happened. Okay, the same thing I have written into the notes also. Now when we talk about, guys, the permanent commission, the Navy and the Indian Air Force, I told you that the Army gave in 2020 after the Supreme Court ruling, but Navy and Indian Air Force have already opened up the permanent commission to the women. So they are something which have already taken this particular reform. Now coming to the present issue. So basically, what happened recently, a petition was filed into the Supreme Court by the officers, by the women officers into the Indian Air Force. So there were the 32 short service commission women officers who joined the service between 93 to 98, and they were given the extensions. There was a 6-year and 4-year extension that was given to them. And by that logic, I told you that the women at the short service commission, they serve at 10 years, but here the two extensions have been given, 6-year extension and 4-year extension. So by that logic, they become entitled to the pension. Okay, they have served 20 years and they become entitled to the pension, but they were not given the pension. So therefore these women approached the Supreme Court and said that we are being discriminated, the pensions have not been given. Now what the Supreme Court happened, Supreme Court has used the Article 142 and has provided that the pensions are to be given to these women officers who have served into the Indian Air Force. Now, what is this Article 142? So, I have told you Article 142 earlier also. Article 142 gives the power to Supreme Court, that Supreme Court can pass any order, can issue any order, can issue any decree in order to do the complete justice. So now in order to do complete justice, Supreme Court had directed the IAF that you have to give the pensions to these women officers. Okay, so this is something that has happened here. Now guys, here we have also I have also given you briefly here, there are certain points that in what other capacity the women are playing the role in the armed forces. Number one, we see that women right now are serving as the medical doctors, dentists into the Indian armed forces, and particularly in the military nursing service. In the military nursing service, only women can serve as the nurses. So this domain has been reserved for the women. Then women are now being inducted as Jawans in the Corps of Military Police since 2019. So in the military police, the women are inducted. Then recently we have seen this particular thing also, that now the National Defense Academy NDA has also started to induct the women cadets. Okay, so this is something that has happened. Then after that, 12 branches have been opened to the women. Fine, the Navy has opened the 12 branches for the women recently, and now the women will also be inducted as the Agniveers under the Agnipath scheme that was announced recently by the government. We have covered also the Agnipath scheme at the multiple times. So under the Agnipath scheme, where the Jawans will be inducted, fine, the Agniveer women will be appointed. Okay. Now, there is one more article that we have taken from the newspaper here, guys. So, here we see this thing, that the Defense Minister of India had proposed that more women should be given the role into the UN peacekeeping forces. So, UN peacekeeping forces are a specialized force which works under the United Nations, and they are sent to the countries where there is instability to restore the peace. When we talk about India, in the UN peacekeeping forces, Indian soldiers, they basically there is one of the biggest representation of Indian soldiers in the UN peacekeeping force. Even the women had served. Now more women are to be sent into the UN peacekeeping force mission. This has been suggested by the defense minister. So this can also be written as how the women are being given the representation. So defense minister had put forward the two proposals, and these proposals are specifically towards expanding the scope and the depth of the Indian ASEAN relations. So ASEAN stands for Association of Southeast Asian Nation. Now guys, here the defense minister has provided that number one, more women are to be inducted into the United Nations peacekeeping operations, and other initiative is there, that is to tackle the marine plastic pollution. He had provided this particular thing, that the youth are to be incorporated, fine, and they need to work in reducing the marine pollution. So that is one thing. Okay, however, these are just the proposals that have been presented. Okay, just the proposals right now. So this is also one way that the women are being inducted. Okay, so that is all guys about this particular article, and now we'll move to the next article. Now, this is a very, very important article. This article is talking about the Unnati scheme. We'll see this particular article with respect to the GS paper number 2, social justice, as well as we will see this particular article with respect to the welfare schemes by the government. Moreover, in the prelims examination also, this kind of a question can be asked, because in the prelims, the questions onto the schemes have been asked multiple number of times. Okay, now in this particular article, guys, first of all, let's read the heading. Skill training of MGNREGA workers lags, center blames it on the states. Now you see, if you just read the heading might not be able to give you a sense that what the article is talking about. So this article, we are going to see the Unnati scheme. Now, what is Unnati scheme? See this thing. Guys, if you know, we are already running the MGNREGA scheme, that is the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, under which the minimum of under which a minimum of 100 days of guaranteed wage employment is given in a financial year to every rural household. Every rural household will get 100 years of paid work. And this work will be given for the unskilled manual labor work will be given. The goal of the MGNREGA is to provide the social protection to the most vulnerable households. It provides a livelihood security, will help in generation of wage employment. Because of that wage employment, even into the rural areas, the durable assets are developed, natural resources can be rejuvenated. Okay, fine, all these particular benefits will come. So MGNREGA scheme is being operated now. As I've told you, that MGNREGA provides the employment of 100 days. But what about after the 100 days? Okay, right now we have seen that particularly after 2022, there was the reverse migration that happened, and large number of people from the urban areas reached to the rural areas. And last year we have found this particular thing, that the entire money given under the MGNREGA got exhausted, and it shows the people's dependence on the MGNREGA. They are highly dependent on MGNREGA. But what about the 100 days? So to tackle that particular thing, government has brought a new scheme, that is the Unnati Scheme. Now this Unnati Scheme aims that the people who have already worked into the MGNREGA, they can apply under the Unnati, and then they will be taught some skill, so that after that skill they can do some skilled activity after the MGNREGA work. Now you see this particular thing, there is a criticism of MGNREGA often that comes. It's provided that MGNREGA gives the opportunity in the unskilled manual work. But in the long term, unskilled manual work doesn't serve any purpose, because we have the largest young population. But the problem is that they are not skilled. So skilling and giving the skilled work is more important. It has more of a value. So therefore, the people who have worked under the MGNREGA, they can they can enroll under the Unnati scheme, and they can upgrade the skill base. So Unnati aims to upgrade the skill base of the MGNREGA worker, and will help them from transitioning from partial employment to the full employment. After learning that skill, they can get employed in a factory or any other thing. Now under the Unnati scheme, the aim is to train one adult member between the age of 18 to 45 years in every household, and priority will be given to those members who have completed 100 days of work under the MGNREGA. So once MGNREGA, after that under the Unnati scheme, a person can enroll. Okay, now the government has given a justification. It has provided that the household who are exhausting their entire 100-day quota in the MGNREGA, it shows that there are some families which are more dependent on MGNREGA. They are the poorest of the poor people. So therefore, this baseline of 100 days of work under MGNREGA is being used. Now, it has been provided by the central government to the states, that you have to make sure that at least 20% of the people who got the work under MGNREGA, these 20% people are being sent under the Unnati scheme. Okay, so if 100 people worked under MGNREGA, please at least send 20 under the Unnati scheme. That was the target that has been given. Now, we'll discuss on that particular thing. So basically guys, under the Unnati scheme, I told you skill development will be there. So 3 of the government initiatives will be used for skilling the people. Number 1, the people will be skilled by using the Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Gramin Kaushal Yojana. Now this particular Gramin Kaushal Yojana, it is a placement linked program where the people who have been enrolled, 70% of them are to be placed with a minimum salary of 6,000 rupees. Fine, so this is a part of the Skill India mission. Then there are the rural self-training institutes, and then there are the Krishi Vigyan Kendras. So here they will be skilled. Then now what is this present article that is talking about? So guys, the present article is talking about that what has happened, skill training of MGNREGA worker lags. I told you minimum 20% of the MGNREGA workers are to be sent to the Unnati. The state governments have failed to do that particular thing. So the data has been provided. It has been provided that the performance has to be 20%. But in the financial year 2020-2021, 71 lakh households worked for 100 days in the country under MGNREGA, but out of that 71 lakh, just 8,600 person received training under the Unnati. So translation from MGNREGA to Unnati has been very much less, it has been very much weak, and government needs to work here, particularly the state government needs to work here. So this is something that has come out of this particular article. So that is all guys about it. I hope that you have understood it, and now we'll be moving to the next article. The India poll in international relations. Okay, this particular article will see with respect to the GS paper number 2, international relations, India's role. India's role in international politics. India's role in international politics. Okay. Now, the article starts from this particular point that, see, in the history it has been seen that when there is a great power contention going on, then the powerful countries, they approach the India, and India plays a stubborn role, that is reluctant. What it means? Right now, you take the example, Russia-Ukraine war is going on. Russia wants that India should support Russia, and USA wants that India should support USA. But what India had done? India had not taken any position. Neither India is supporting Russia nor India is supporting the USA. Okay. Even in the United Nations Security Council, in the UNGA, there are the votings that have happened where the Russia has been condemned for the war. But what India did? India abstained. Fine, India did not voted. So India is trying to balance in between. In the earlier times also that kind of a thing had happened. You might be already knowing about the NAM, non-alignment movement. There also neither India chose the USA's camps nor the India chose the USSR's camp. So it has been provided that when the great power seeks Indian support in the geopolitical events, India is stubborn, India is reluctant. But this article is not criticizing India entirely. Article is saying that India is stubborn. India is not stubborn, fine, but rather India is having a sense of self by which the India sees itself as a pole in the international system. Fine, India is not entirely stubborn. India sees itself as a pole. Now, what it means? Now, you see this particular thing, India as a pole means India is an important country which can swing the entire equation. India is just not a satellite state or a camp follower. For example, Pakistan, it is just a camp follower which very conveniently chose the USA's camps during the Cold War. Okay, India is not a satellite follower. India is a big state and holds the position of a pole and can swing the entire things. Okay, now India as a pole, how we can say that? First of all, India has assumed the chair of the G20. Now, when we talk about the G20, it has the basically the in terms of population, in terms of the GDP, in terms of the trade, G20 is the biggest bloc. So India being the chairman of the G20 shows that India's importance. Then India is also assuming the chair into the SCO. Now SCO and the G20 are the two very big blocks of the world, and India chairing them shows India's important role. Now, understand guys, the article is talking about that India has a larger than life civilizational sense of the self. India's in the past non-alignment movement where India did not choose any position. It was because of the India's unique foreign policy. Now, what is the India's unique foreign policy? Now, you see this thing. Though India had made certain mistakes into the past, but India as a modern state refuses to led by another okay, here India refuses to be led by another state. Okay, India refuses to be led by another pole. Rather, India wants to take its own decisions. India wants to drive itself. Okay, so therefore, it has been provided that India will not just be following anyone. Rather, India will be the driver. Okay, now India will take the position on even any case on any issue, case by case. Now, you see this particular thing. If India becomes permanently attached with the with the Russia, it means always the India will support Russia, whatever the Russia is doing. Or if India gets attached with the USA, it will always support the USA. So therefore, India says that we will evaluate every case. Every case is unique. We'll see its merits and demerits, and the case by case basis, we will choose what we have to do. So therefore, we are never picking any camp, or we are not picking any particular country. India wants to retain this ability to take the decision on any issue on the case by case basis. Moreover, understand this particular thing guys, the classical view of the polarity is that of domination. Okay, it is the one where there is a great power. Okay, for example, we often use the word polarity during the Cold War. In the Cold War, we saw that the world was divided in two poles. One was the USA poles and other was the USSR's pole. Okay, and both of them had a lot of power. They wanted to dominate the world. India is also calling itself as a pole, but India's meaning of the pole is not just to consolidate power. Rather, India sees itself, views itself as a pole. How? It is a pole because number one, India, India does not believe in the strategic periphery. India does not believe in the strategic periphery in South Asia where it has a natural claim to primacy. Okay, now you see this particular thing. India here in the South Asian region had played a very responsible role. Okay, it has a natural claim to primacy, but there also India doesn't dominates its power. India wants to maintain the rule-based congenial order. It discourages interference by the powers in that space. In the South Asia region, it doesn't want to bring any outsider. It doesn't want to bring any contestation. India has a natural primacy, but India wants to maintain the rule-based order, doesn't want to bring any outsider. India often speaks of the underprivileged collectives. For example, South Asian countries which are underprivileged. Into the NAM, it talked about the developing nations, global South. Fine. Right now also India is talking about the regional law and order. So India is a pole which has been a responsible nation without any power inclination and which is talking about bringing some kind of a regional convergences. Now when we talk about India, India's focus on the region has been more of a provider of common goods rather than the rule settler or the demander of allegiance. For example, USA, China, they ask for the allegiance. Fine, if they are providing fund, if they are providing assistance. But India just wants to be a provider of common goods and not a rule settler. Okay, this is something that has happened. Now, India in the past also had made certain statements onto many of the global concerns that have been there. For example, Ukraine war, Iraq war, NATO, UNSC. Okay. For example, we'll take the example of the Ukraine. What happened into the Ukraine war? Now, though Russia is a very close friend of India, but India clearly said to the Russia that the war should come to an end. The war had dragged for a very long time. So India is even voicing what it believes. Moreover, India plays a very important role into the Indo-Pacific region and other parts. Okay, so basically because of this important role that the India is playing, India is like a pole, and India being a pole wants to be very responsible and doesn't wants to take momentary positions on certain of the issues that the other countries have done. So that is all guys about this particular article. Now moving on into the next article. Think local climate action. Think local climate actions. Think Menangadi. Now this particular article we'll see with respect to GS paper number 2 as well as GS paper number 3, the role of Panchayati Raj institutions in climate change. Okay, and a very fresh perspective has been given. Now you see, in COP26, India had taken the 5 climate goals, that is the Panch Amrit. What are these Panch Amrit? Number 1, the Panch Amrit is that we need to reach the non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt by 2030. Okay, then we need to achieve 50% of our energy requirements by renewable energy by 2030. Third is we need to reduce 1 billion ton of carbon emissions by 2030. Then the fourth goal was to reduce the carbon intensity at 45% by 2030. Okay, so whatever the carbon emissions we were doing, we need to reduce it by to 45%. Then achieve the net zero or the carbon neutrality by 2070. So these are the 5 targets we have taken into the COP26. In the COP27 also, India has released its long-term emission strategy. We have discussed into the newspaper also. Okay, now India, if it wants to achieve the target of the Paris 2015, COP26, the Panchamrit, as well as the COP27's target, India needs to understand that the role of Panchayati Raj institution is very important here. If we don't involve the Panchayati Raj institutions, we might not be able to do much. We need to understand that we need to align our international and national policies in such a way that the local action plans, the panchayat based action plans, are also being prepared. Now, there are certain case studies of the panchayats across the India that have played a very important role in the climate change, climate mitigation. The first example has been given is of Menangadi Gram Panchayat of Kerala. Now, this particular Gram Panchayat had taken the goal of carbon neutrality, and they had provided this particular thing that they will be moving towards the zero carbon development, nature conservation, the food, energy, and seed self sufficiency, economic development. These are the goals that have been taken by the Menangadi Panchayat of the Kerala, and all these particular goals are very forward looking. Now, it has been provided that the Menangadi Panchayat of the Kerala, it came out with the carbon neutral Menangadi plan way back in 2016. Now, the countries are talking about carbon neutrality in 2022, but in 2016 they came out with the plan of the carbon neutrality. For that particular thing, the campaigns were started to educate the people so that they reduce the carbon emission. The classes were organized, awareness program was organized, and there was also the greenhouse gas emission inventory that was prepared. Okay, now the detailed survey was done with respect to the carbon footprint of the Menangadi of the Kerala, and it was found that it is a carbon positive panchayat. Now, what is a carbon positive? See, carbon neutral means that whatever carbon is being emitted, that particular carbon is to be absorbed. Okay. Now, basically, that is the carbon neutral. What is carbon negative? Carbon negative means that whatever you are emitting, okay, let's say you are emitting the 100 units, you will absorb, let's say, 200 unit. So that particular place is carbon negative. When we talk about Bhutan, Bhutan is carbon negative. They emit less carbon, but they absorb more, so they are carbon negative. Now, the Menangadi was found to be carbon positive, and then what they have done, they have used this awareness campaigns, and they are educating the people that how they needs to play an important role. Even the schemes such as the tree banking has also been started. What is tree banking? Fine, it is a landmark scheme where to bring the carbon neutral activities, more and more plants are to be planted, more and more trees are to be planted, and for planting of the trees, the free loans will also be provided. Then after that, the entire community has been involved into the process. They have involved the students, youth, technical and academic institutions, fine, and all of the institutions, schools, fine, communities, they are being given the targets, and on the basis of that particular target they are being assessed. So this is something that has happened. Moreover, LED bulb manufacturing and such kind of a micro enterprises which are supportive of the environment, these enterprises are being started up in the village. Then there is another example also that has been given, that is the Pali Gram Panchayat in the Jammu and Kashmir. Now, the Pali Gram Panchayat had come out with the people centric model of climate mitigation and climate adaptation. They have prepared they have prepared a climate resilient plan where the villagers, first of all, they are made aware of the climate change, then the mitigation factors, that how by reducing the energy consumption, how by cutting down the fossil fuel consumption, by using the solar energy, the emissions can be reduced. So all these particular efforts have been started. They have abandoned the plastic and are promoting the plantation drives throughout the village. Then the next is that biogas gas plants as well as the solar panels are being introduced into the panchayat. Then there are the other examples that have also been given, and here there are many of the examples from the all the different states. For example, there is the Sichawal Gram Panchayat where the Kali Bain river is being rejuvenated, okay, so that the people can depend on to the river and they should not exploit the groundwater. Then there is the Odanturai Panchayat in Tamil Nadu, which have established their own windmill so that they can reduce the dependence onto the uh, onto the non renewables onto the non renewable sources. Okay. Then there is Tikar Kawadi Gram Panchayat in Maharashtra. It has started its biogas plant and green energy production. Then there are the Chappar Padavu Gram Panchayat in Kerala, which has started the green islands, and in these green islands are specialized zone of the plantations. Okay. Now, when we talk about the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, it is focusing on localizing the sustainable developmental goals. For example, the sustainable developmental goals are to be incorporated within the Panchayat's developmental plan. This is something that the Panchayati Raj Ministry is focusing on. It is focusing on clean and green village, and the clean and green village has identified as a fifth theme where the Panchayat need to take up the activities which promotes the clean and green village. Now, in India, More than 1,09,000 gram panchayats have prioritized the clean and green village in their developmental plan of 2022-2023. So understand this particular thing, that when we talk about the panchayats, panchayats play a very important role, and panchayats are always at the forefront of many of such developmental activities, and therefore we need to understand that how more the panchayat's role can be leveraged. That is all guys about this particular article, and now we'll move into the next article. India Australia trade pact set to open up opportunities. Now this particular article will see with respect to the GS paper number 2 as well as GS paper number 3, bilateral economic relations, okay. Now before going in this particular, now guys, in this article there is a no substance that is there, just a one line content is there, but to understand that one line content you need to first of all know the background that has been there. So the background goes like this, that actually what has happened recently, actually just a few months back, India and Australia, they have signed the ECTA, which stands for Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, ECTA. So ECTA, it is a bilateral agreement between the India and Australia. Okay. Now understand this particular thing. First of all, this is important because Australia is the third country after the Japan and South Korea, which are the members of the OECD, with which we have signed the free trade agreement. So out of the OECD members, Australia is the third country which with whom we have signed the FTA. Now, what are the basic features of this particular FTA? Number one, this FTA will provide the preferential market access. India will get the preferential market access in the Australia on 100% of tariff lines. The tariffs will be reduced. So basically the Indian exports that were going to the Australia earlier, they were taxed and there were the high import duties. So 100% of the tariff lines, they will see the preferential market access, the tariffs will go down there. After that, India's pharmaceutical industry will get a big boost. You see that India's medicines, they have already been approved by the USA and the UK's regulatory body. And once they have been approved there, fine, in Australia, they can get a very fast track approval. And in Australia also, the Indian pharmaceutical products market can increase. Then India will be offering the preferential access to 70% of the tariff lines. Now you see this particular thing guys, that Australia will be reducing the 100% of tariff lines, we will be giving 70% of the tariff lines, their reduction will be given. So here we see this particular thing. Now why not the 100% of tariff lines with there, why we are not reducing the import taxes on all the products? There is one reason. See, Australia is a very big market player into the dairy sector, and in India our dairy farmers are marginal cattle rearers. So if the Australian dairy products will be given the complete access, then the Indian dairy farmers will be impacted in a negative way. Okay. Then the Indian graduates from the STEM, that is the science, technology, engineering and mathematics, will be granted the extended post-study work visas in the Australia. And then zero duty access to 96% of Indian exports will be given in Australia, and 85% of India's export will get the zero duty Australia's exports will get the zero duty access in India. Now, by this particular free trade agreement, it is expected that the India-US trade will go to 45 to 50 billion dollar over the next 5 years. Right now, the India-Australia trade stands at 27 billion, so it will increase to 50 billion. And after that, we might then be going for the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement (CECA), which is the most expanded version of the free trade agreement. So after this, we might go into that also. Recently, India UAE FTA was also signed, and it has come into the force recently. This is also one more development that had happened. So guys, this ECTA was signed. Now what is the news? So right now the news is of only two lines. What happened? Now the Australian Parliament had ratified the ECTA. So the ECTA was to be passed into the Australia's Parliament, and now the Australia's Parliament has given it approval. So this is something that has happened. Guys, I hope that you have understood it, and now we'll move to the next article. Now, this article is talking about the National Suicide Prevention Strategy. National Suicide Prevention Strategy. Now guys, the National Suicide Prevention Strategy, I have discussed this entire article in the yesterday's newspaper analysis. Okay, so in fact these notes I had given into the yesterday's newspaper analysis because day before that the national suicide prevention strategy was launched. Now this particular editorial, it is just containing the same substance that has been given, not anything different is there, the same things are being provided. However, already we have seen it yesterday. If you have seen the yesterday's video, very good. If you haven't seen, you can go and you can watch that particular video. By the way guys, just briefly if I tell you, when we talk about India, India is seeing the high suicide rate. 1 lakh lives are lost every year to the suicide, and in the category of 15 to 29 years, suicide is the biggest killer in India, and the suicide rate are increasing. It has increased from 10.2 to 11.3% per 1 lakh population as per the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So therefore we need to have the strategies in place to address the issue of suicide. Okay, article is talking about that the common reasons for the suicide are that first of all, family problems constitute to 34% of suicide, and illness constitute to 18% of the suicide cases. Then the bankruptcy, economic problems, okay, and 10% of the cases of suicide are there because the cause is not known. Now this national suicide prevention strategy will be focusing on certain key areas: effective surveillance of the people, then the OPD, psychiatric OPDs will be provided by the district mental health programs. Okay, mental well-being will be added into the educational institutions curriculum. Okay, then the guidelines for the media, that how media needs to report the suicide cases. After that, it is provided that basically it is provided that India's cultural and social realities will also be kept into the mind. This particular policy, it is in line with the WHO's Southeast Asia regional strategy, but still India's policies, India's ground conditions will also be kept into the mind. So this is the national suicide prevention strategy. Okay, I have not gone too much into the details because yesterday already I have taken a very elaborative discussion on this particular line. Now, moving to the next article, India and the UAE hold talks on the food security cooperation. Now, again, this article as such is not containing much of a substance, but we need to know some of the background first. Okay. Now, first of all, guys, we need to know about the I2U2 initiative. I2U2 initiative. Now, I2U2, it was the recent agreement that has been signed between the four countries, that is the India, Israel, USA and UAE. Under this I2U2 initiative, these countries have said that they will be cooperating on certain important areas. First of all, there will be the security cooperation. Okay, India, Israel, USA and UAE can come together and can focus on regional security, can build the capacities of each other so that they can fight with the terrorism, extremism, which is increasing. Then the countries will be focusing on the technology transfers. Okay, we see that the India and Israel particularly are having expertise into the technology. Israel and USA are having particular prowess into the technology. So how Israel and USA can provide the technological assistance to the India and UAE, that will be focused. Then food security. Now, when we talk about India, guys, India happens to be a major food exporter to the Israel, to the UAE, as well as to the other countries also. So therefore, the India will be providing the exports. Moreover, the UAE particularly will be investing into the food processing industries into the India. Now, if we talk about the food exports, India exports to UAE between April and September what around 16 billion. Okay, now there has been 24% increase. Okay, and particularly when we talk about the food exports to the UAE, majority of food exports are the, when we talk about the exports to UAE, majority of are the food exports. Then the countries will be working on other platforms also, for example, in trade, climate fighting against COVID-19, security. These areas will be focused upon. Okay, now what has happened recently in the July, the UAE I2U2 countries, they met and they provided that they want to harness the private capital, private investments into the agriculture, infrastructure, digital connectivity, etc. Now what has happened, there is the conference between the India and UAE that had happened, which are talking about the food security cooperation. So one of ADQ, it is a group, it is a corporate of the UAE. Now this ADQ wants to come into the India. So just they have done some discussion, some concrete has not come out of that, just a discussion has been held. Okay, now that discussion has been held, one line concept is not that much important, but this I2U2 initiative, which is the initiative under which these negotiations are happening, this is something that you need to see and you need to understand. Okay, so that is all guys about this article. Railways to stimulate accident to test stimulate accident to test preparedness of the relief teams. Now, just guys, this particular article, no need to take the notes. Just as a one line case study, we can add into the answers where if any question onto the railway safety is coming. So what has happened? Indian Railways for the first time will assess the preparedness and performance of the accident relief teams into the real time. So whenever there is a railway accident that happens, relief team comes and relief teams rescues the people. Now what is their preparedness? Whether they are equipped to deal with these challenges or not. To test that particular thing, there are the mock tests that are being done. What has done? The condemned railway coaches, the old railway coaches, they have been used and they have been artificially derailed so that the rescue teams can come and rescue teams can do their operations. There are the fake dummies that have been used here. Okay, so here the preparedness will be seen. Now by these particular mock drills, we can even train the upcoming forces. Okay, so this particular operation has been carried into the Bangalore. Okay, and here the relief teams from the different zones across the railway networks, they have participated. Is it clear or not? Now in the article further, it is talking about that, it is being talking about that, okay, these many officers from this particular team, this particular region had participated. Now those details are unnecessary for the examination. Is it clear or not? We just need to see this particular thing and as a case study we can add. Guys, understand this thing. Okay, you need to understand the need of this exam. In the question, in the UPSC paper, a question will not come that in Bangalore a mock drill was carried, explain about that mock drill. No, question will come on to the vulnerability of Indian railways, accidents into the Indian railways, challenges into the Indian railways. In the challenges, accidents in Indian railways, one of a challenge, and to meet that particular challenge, there are so much of the initiatives that are being taken, and one is this one. Okay, government said to grant more funds for the rural schemes to ease pain. Now, guys, you see this particular thing that in the during the time of the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020, a lot of reverse migration happened into the rural areas. Large people reached to the rural areas, and therefore, the we find this particular thing that the rural schemes are very much important to ease the pain of the people who have reached to the rural areas. So now the government is deciding that it will raise the allocation of rural development ministry by 18% to 1.6 trillion rupees. Okay, so in the present budget that will be coming, 18% increment will be given to the rural development ministry. Okay, now the rural unemployment rate in the recent times have been 7%, which is very much high. So to tame that rural unemployment, to tame the rural stress, to tame the rural pain, their 18% increase will be given. Is it clear or not? Now guys, understand this particular thing. Exact increase, whether it is 18% or 15%, it will be coming when the budget will be presented, because in the budget there will be the voting on to the grants that will be done, and when the final grants will be passed, we'll be able to see that particular thing. Okay, now understand this particular thing, guys, that when we talk about the rural India, we know this thing that the MGNREGA scheme provides the minimum job guarantee. It is just paying $2 to $3 per day, which is not very much sufficient. So there is a very big reason that the funding to the Ministry of Rural Development is to be increased. This is something that has come here. Okay, that is all about it. However, how much money will be increased, how many percentage, that is not something to be seen in much detail. Okay, now guys, understand this thing, though I'm repeating it again and again, but it is my duty to tell you if in case you are preparing new for this exam. See, just every article because it has been published into the newspaper doesn't mean that it is important and it will be asked in your examination. Whenever you are reading the article, you need to ask yourself a question that can such kind of a thing be asked, or can such a thing be framed as a question in the exam. Only in those things you need to go in detail. Okay, so the articles that we have taken in the start, you see we have given a lot of background even when it was not given in the articles, because those were the important things which can be asked into the examination. Okay, so you need to learn this particular art of decoding. Okay, a bill protecting the state surveillance. Now guys, this is the fourth day consecutively into the row that an article onto the personal data protection bill is coming. We have discussed this article on Saturday, Monday, Tuesday. Okay, and uh, the same things have been repeated even in this particular article. If you have followed, if you are following regularly, well and good. No need to at all read this particular article, because the exam point of view, fine, for that particular thing we have already done much more than coverage that was required. So if you have seen, no need to go in this particular article. However, if you have not seen the earlier coverages, I will suggest you that you can go and can watch the newspaper analysis of Monday, where I have explained in much more detail all the developments, the background, this particular bill, the criticism. Okay. And if you want the Tuesday's analysis also, you can watch. But Monday is the most important one. You will find the timestamp which has been provided by the Bhumi. Okay. So from there you can read that article. Now, the mains practice question for today. The mains practice question for today says that analyze how panchayats can play a crucial and frontline role in coordinating effective responses to climate risk, enabling adaptation and building climate change resilient communities. This will be a 10 marker question and will be for GS paper number 2. That is all guys for today. And with this we come to an end to the today's newspaper analysis. So guys, that is all for today. I hope that you have liked the video. And guys, I just have a request from you that if you are watching and if you are enjoying the video, please do hit the like button, because it takes a lot of hard work to prepare the notes and to present that video every day on a continuous basis. So please, as a token of love towards our channel, hit the like button, and if you have liked it more, please do leave your lovely comments in the video. Thank you so much.